My name is Dina Mansour. I'm the executive director of the Maureen and Mike Mansfield Center, and it's our honor to co-sponsor this event. Very grateful to the college that sponsors this with Dean Christina Yoshimura is here. Dr. Karen Adams has been the inspiration for this program for many, many years. So it's our honor to support them and you in this event. The Mansfield Center is based here at the University of Montana. We foster globally minded leaders of integrity. We offer programs supporting civic education, international opportunities, events that are rooted in democracy, freedom, and supporting youth like you. Some of you may have seen our flyers at the front desk. We do have a fully funded 2-week program to Taiwan that some of you would be eligible to apply for. And watch our website as well. We annually have high school programs that are fully funded to Korea and other countries around the world. So I'm honored to introduce our speaker today. It's exciting that he's actually joining us virtually because that means that not only can you have advantage of his expertise, but we actually have a lot of Model UN alumni that have joined us on the live stream. And this will be recorded and shared out with other high school groups across the state in the coming days. So today the keynote speech is by Jason Bellini. He will be speaking on Frontlines and Deadlines, a correspondent's guide to finding and telling the world's toughest stories. He is the Scripps News International correspondent and host of its flagship award-winning long-form series, In the Shadows with Jason Bellini. A veteran of CNN, Bloomberg News, and the Wall Street Journal, Jason is known for pushing storytelling to the edge, embedding in war zones, tracing the collapse of fragile states, and pioneering the use of cutting-edge video technologies to capture humanity at its most fragile and fierce. And the best introduction you can have to his work is his sizzle reel. So I'm going to turn it over to the screens now so you can see a bit about his work, and then we'll go right into his talk.
War correspondent Jason Bellini, live from Kyiv.
Ukraine enters a new phase of the war. That's a drone in the sky. We hear fighter jets going over constantly.
Scripps News continues to stay in the middle of it all.
Rounds being fired in the distance. Okay, Julie, we have to go. I have to get down.
These are the weapons they brought. It's pretty much nonstop artillery shelling outside.
A world of secret missions, steely focus, and the art of staying unseen.
They heard shooting down that way near Barbecue's headquarters, so we're gonna get back in the car.
Jason Bellini, he's live in southern Israel right now.
Behind me.
The fate of the hostages still unknown.
America is the indispensable nation. It's equally impossible to imagine any form of surrender. Right now, trying to eliminate them inside of Gaza.
I'm focusing on people.
These guys have one of the most dangerous jobs in the world.
We journey into the world's gray zones of earth-shaking events.
Right on the edge of the deadly drone zone. Families fleeing from a capital in collapse. Our investigation into the fate of Ukraine's stolen orphans.
I love that Scripps News gives me the opportunity to go where the stories are.
Embedded with U.S. Special Forces. Many of them for weeks, if not months on end. We've already spent weeks in captivity on the eve of the high-stakes meeting between President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Are you able to make any determination on where they might be? I'll show you that view again of what we're seeing right now. Our viewpoint into Gaza.
Congratulations, Scripps News.
Embers of the human spirit glow brightest where human depravity is darkest. And tonight, our team feels humbled as we accept this award honoring David Bloom.
Soon after the Russians took Dennis away, we would keep looking for him.
Good to meet you, my friend. One of the things that you said was that you wanted to fight for the Russians.
Это неправильно, я не знаю.
Who worries about you? Who would be heartbroken if something happened to you, if you were killed?
Yes, sir.
I don't know what you heard from before. I'll give you a quick summary. Very quick summary. I want to do a story about FPV drones. Okay, so you with me? So we I don't know how much more I need to go back, but let's keep on moving. All right, so I want to do the story, and so it occurred to me, you know what? I bet that there is some kid out there who's like a master gamer who found himself with these skills that could be applied to using killer drones. And so I went out looking for that person. And ended up visiting a number of units that were sort of on the rotation off the front line to go find my character. And I met 2 or 3, and they were interesting, but none of them quite fit that kind of dream-o-vision, as I like to call it, of the character, the central casting character, until I met Darwin. Darwin. Well, first, an amazing name, right? He was a biology student. That's why he had the name Darwin. He loved reading about biology, but he was also a gamer and an ace FPV drone pilot. Now, right then and there, I wasn't able to go in bed with him because I ended up getting called by my bosses. This was right before, the day before October 7th in Israel, and they said, go, go, go. So I had to leave Ukraine, get myself to Israel, but I knew I was going to come back, and I was going to spend time with Darwin. Well, what did I get myself into? We had to meet him at 5 a.m. because there's a very narrow window of time when it's safe-ish to move to the position where he operates the drones with his little team. And the reason being, learn this later, and I start learning a lot more about this later, is that right now there are thermal drones that are covering the sky in eastern Ukraine. And these thermal drones, they see everything. Anything that gives off heat, a car, a truck, it is seen, and the Russians can then target with artillery. And the Ukrainians are doing the same thing. But there's a narrow window of time at dawn and at dusk when it doesn't see as well, when you can be less obvious. Ended up going in with him and his team and we were locked in there because you can't move in and out during the daytime. There are drones during the day that would see you, spot you, and you'd become under attack. With him in this bunker, and I saw the new world that we're living in. He went after, I'm going to say 15 different targets, and I think he hit around 7 or 8 of them. And what struck me was that, well, this is very intimate. He's seeing right before his eyes the moment before a person dies, a person is killed by him. He sees their reaction. We see it there on the screens. And for him, it was like a video game. Now, he was deeper than that. He realized that, yeah, there may be some psychological effects long term, but he didn't have time to think about that in that moment, at this time, not while the war is going on. Now, as you all may be aware, FPV drones, well, they've exploded. They become the most crucial factor right now on the front lines in Ukraine. Both sides using them with enormous effect in terms of terror and casualties. And it's not just in Ukraine, all over the world. These drones, which are very cheap, they cost around $1,000 when you include the explosive that's strapped onto them, right? They're easy to produce by just about anyone. And they're also very hard to, as we say, mitigate the risk of them. Right now, the places that I've been going for the last 3 years, it's really not possible. My company wouldn't approve of allowing me to go to these locations because of these FPV drones now saturating the air. You're in a vehicle and you could come under attack at any moment. And in fact, just in the last week, there have been several journalists who were killed. I just saw a video yesterday from, I think it was a German team that was hit. Fortunately, they survived. But if you're on the roads, you're going to be a target, and there's not a whole lot you can do with it. You can have these radio frequency interference modules, but those they go out of date real fast. Both sides are able to quickly change the frequencies so that the mitigation tools become ineffective. And so what you've got on the front line, as you may well know now, is an absolute bloodbath. And soldiers are dying one by one. They can target individual soldiers with these, and they can also target the vehicles, tanks. Tanks are becoming, in many ways, obsolete, right? They're slow, and they're big and easy to target, and these drones can now carry large enough explosive munitions to take them out. It's a whole new world. It's like nothing we've ever seen before. And why am I telling this story? One, just to give you a little bit of a feel for what it is to be a journalist these days. It's difficult. It's always been difficult, never been more dangerous to be doing this job. The other thing, I know there's some journalism students out there, and I wanted to share with you a little bit about how stories come to be. How do I come up with the ideas for the stories that I do when I'm trying to do original work? In that case, I was using what I call my patented "there must be somebody who" method. There must be somebody who. There must be some, and I found in Darwin, my perfect character, he fit the image. He had an earring that with a propeller on it, and he looked sort of like this sort of punk gamer kid. He was perfect. The video ended up doing enormously well. It got more than 5-6 million views on YouTube alone. And it was interesting. I was this summer with some U.S. Special Forces in Australia, and they had all seen it. It became at that moment the first big defining video to show this new world of warfare, of drone warfare. So how did I get into this? Why am I in this crazy profession? Oh, and it's crazy. It doesn't get any less crazy. And so if you're thinking about being a journalist, one of the things I always tell people is what was told to me. And that is, if you could see yourself doing something else other than being a journalist, do something else. Do something else. Unfortunately, I was in the camp that couldn't see myself doing something else. And maybe this will be relevant to you guys who aren't planning to be journalists. My origin story, if you will. And also, one thing I want to note is that I appreciate you all listening to me, because I recognize that some of you may be future sources. So I hope you think kindly of me, remember me, and send me and will be someday sending me messages on encrypted messages on Signal. And or whatever platform it is we're using when you're out in the world as diplomats or out in the field. So my origin story, I'll tell it to you really quickly. I'm in college, and I knew I wanted to be a journalist, but I didn't know how do I get into this? I was studying history. I was at Georgetown, but it was the dawn of a new era. I saw it very early that small video cameras could be used to film broadcast quality. There was a camera that came out from Sony that was $4,000. And this was like the first prosumer, as they call it, broadcast camera. And so I talked to my grandparents and I asked them, I was wondering, can you guys loan me some money? I'll pay you back. I never paid them back. But it was an investment in myself, where I went out and started filming stories on my own, and then learning the craft of doing journalism on my own. I ended up doing some amazing internships. One of them was at CNN. So I got my first job at CNN right out of college. And it was an entry-level job. It was the grunt work kind of job, where my role was to put the microphones on the guests in the Washington Bureau, and also to roll the teleprompter, right? What they're reading what the anchors are reading. I did that for about a year. And then at night, I would take footage that I'd filmed, and I would go into the edit rooms and put together my stories, and none of them were very good. But I was getting better, and I was learning. And I was showing, I found some people who took an interest in me and would look at my work. And then there was a show that they had at the time on CNN. It was called CNN Newsroom, and it was a show that aired in high schools. I don't think it still exists, but anyway, they finally agreed to run one of my stories, and that was it. I was in. I was on the air. I was doing stories on television, on CNN. Then, now this is 1999, the war in Kosovo breaks out, and I decided, I want to be there. I'm going to go. I'm going to figure it out. Now, my boss at the time she and I didn't quite see eye to eye. She didn't like my little scheming behind the scenes, doing my own little projects, and I had to keep it kind of on the DL with what I was up to. So I didn't tell her where I was going. I just said I was going on vacation for 2 weeks. Okay, fine. So I end up. I found it was a whole scheme where I got talked to the military, the Air Force, and was able through Germany to fly into Albania and meet up with CNN's team there. And I show up at the hotel where CNN's teams are, and I say, "Yeah, I'm with the show for high school kids, and I'm doing stories for them." So I'd already established with that show. All right, maybe I'll have something I can send back to you, right? And so it was me with my little camera, and I was like, "Okay, who is this kid?" And I was a kid. Go out and start filming things, and then at the time, I now what I look back at now, I think, oh, I was a little bit reckless. I was doing, the things that I shouldn't have been doing in terms of my own safety, but I was getting interesting materials. And then I came back and I'd offer it to the correspondents. I'd be like, hey, I got this. Do you want to use it? They'd look at it and they're like, yeah. And so I kept doing that for these 2 weeks. And then towards around the end of those 2 weeks, I get a call from the guy who runs international deployments in Atlanta for CNN. And he asked me, do you want to stay? And he says, I can't say for how long, but I'll pay you $600 a day. I was like, what? No, it wasn't $600 a day. What am I saying? It was $300 a day. I thought it was like a fortune at the time. And I said, yeah, I'll stay. And so I stayed. And I let my boss back in DC know, oh, I'm in Kosovo, or Albania at the time. And and I'm not sure when I'm coming back because they asked me to stay. Well, she wrote me back and she said, okay, well, you need to submit your resignation immediately. Like it was a very cold message. So what did I do? I submitted my resignation. I quit the job in DC and ended up staying there for 6 months. And that's where I really learned how to be a journalist. I got to work sometimes with, but more long times alongside the best in the business, right? Oh, there's a corollary to that story about my boss, and that is somehow, well, I know how. I can't say exactly, but word got back to the executives at CNN that I was told by my boss to resign. And I found out later she got chewed out. You have this kid who's showing initiative, risking his life over there, and you tell me he has to quit. She got chewed out publicly in a meeting. And so it was a surprise to me when the next day after I resigned, she wrote me back again and said, we do not accept your resignation. Okay. I did not know it was completely opaque what went on behind the scenes on that one. But all I knew was I was staying. And they said they had my job waiting for me when I got back. Fine. I wasn't going back to that job. That much I knew. There was no going back. So what can you learn? What does this have to offer you, whether it be a journalist or not? I'm not sure exactly, but I think that there's a moment in your life, a window of time when you can take risks. I'm not talking about necessarily taking safety risks, but you can be bold. And it's a fairly narrow window when you're young, when you can do the kinds of thing I did, just up and go. Life gets much more complicated as time goes on. Could I do that now? No, I'd be worried about this. I'd be worried about that. I'd be, no. There's a window of time when you can go and just give things a go. And you know what? You can fail. It's fine. You've got plenty of runway to keep on trying. And so when I think about journalism, my career in journalism, one of the things that it's done for me, I think, I have a quote from one of my inspirations, the great Hunter S. Thompson. He said, I always looked at journalism as a way to get somebody else to pay for my continuing education. Well, that nails it for me. I'm always learning. And by being out in the world, going on the assignments that I do, I'm always learning. This time next week, I've just landed in Port Sudan. I'm headed to Sudan. That's going to be a long, grueling journey. heading into Sudan, but what a story that is. And perhaps some of you at Model UN are looking at the situation there. It's the world's worst humanitarian disaster of our time. For example, there's a hospital in Al Fasher, the town that's been now taken over by the rebel group, right? The ruthless rebel group. Well, there were 148 people in this hospital on the main ward. Every one of them is dead. We could see from satellite images the blood on the ground. Horrifying situation. So why am I going there? What stories am I going to tell? I won't know until, a lot of times I won't know until I'm there, but I'm going to be working with a number of UN agencies who've welcomed me and who've been of assistance. The UN World Food Program, for example. I'm going to be working with Doctors Without Borders and visiting their hospitals because there's a famine happening right now in Sudan. The stories are going to find me once I'm there. There's no doubt. That's the way it always works. But this is what I do. I dive into situations, try to learn as much as I can before I go, but I know the real learning, that's going to happen once I'm on the ground, talking to people, meeting people, engaging with people. One of the things that you may all have in mind right now is artificial intelligence. What does that mean for you, right? You know, it's predicted that it will have a disproportionate impact on younger people, right? And their early careers when they're doing the jobs that are more routine and that could be done by artificial intelligence. So what to make of that? One thing that I'm fairly confident in, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, reading what the leading thinkers on this topic have to say and where things are headed with AI. And one thing I've moderate to strong conviction that some of the things that I do and that you can be doing are ones that AI cannot do. And that involves connection with people. AI, well, it can connect in its own way, but it can't go and find a Darwin for me. It's not going to do that. It can't go and see for itself and find the person who's going to tell me about the next big story, who's going to give me guidance on, oh, you need to meet this person. That person's really interesting. The best stories that I find are ones that I wasn't looking for necessarily, but my antenna is up, open heart, open mind. I'm meeting people and something just grabs me. I'm like, oh, that's a story. Oh, I need to go chase that. Oh, I need to learn more about that. Can you introduce me to that person? In journalism, it's a kind of a funny profession because, you know, you're always asking things from people. They're always like, oh, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? So you end up having to build your charm. You know, that's a big part of it. If you're going to get people to do things to help you out, you got to kind of, you know, have your charm about you. And that's a skill that you learn over time. You know, how to get what you need and try to get people, you know, and part of that is just experience out there in the world. There's no substitute for that because you learn to calibrate always how you interact with people, how you know, different types of people, it's a different way of interacting. The emotional intelligence is something that you build over time through experience after experience after experience. We're like AI. You need to feed our brains experience after experience after experience to learn from it, to build the algorithm for what is most effective for you. So I hope this is helpful to you in some way as you think about your careers and you think about the world that is emerging right now. It's an interesting, exciting, scary one. But I believe strongly that there's one of opportunity, but it's going to be one where you've got to have that get up and go. That's the key, it seems to me, to success right now, especially within the world of AI. Get up and go, connect with people, meet people, spend your time developing your emotional intelligence. That will be the intelligence that protects you against artificial intelligence. So those are the thoughts I wanted to share. Now I'm open to your questions, thoughts. I'm excited to hear from you. Thank you.
Jason, thank you so much for your inspirational remarks. We really appreciate hearing more about your work, how you got into the field, and some advice for our university and high school students. So we are going to turn to questions now. We'll start with the high school students. If you line up here at the microphone, we'll start with your questions. For those joining remotely, please post your questions in the Q&A box, and Dr. Karen Adams will send them to me for me to read ahead. So I invite you all to come on up. I'm sure there's a lot of burning questions in this group. I see a few people coming up. I see Eli from Big Sky High School. All right.
Yeah. All right, settle down, settle down. That's enough, thank you. Eli Steinberg, Sentinel High School. I was wondering, you talk about the wars that you've covered and reported on, and obviously with any conflict, there's going to be safety concerns. But what are some of the specific things that have been unique about your role as a journalist when covering the crises and the conflicts that you've covered?
Thank you, Eli from Big Sky High School. Do I have that right?
Sentinel.
Sentinel High School. Okay. Thanks for the question. What's been unique? Well, I would say that one of the things that's I feel like unique as a television journalist about my work is that you don't see a lot of me going and doing that sort of standing in front of something that's going boom and doing what we call in the business a stand-up. I'm focused on stories, on people's stories, and I have also the luxury of doing longer form stories. Yeah, you do sometimes have these like live shots where, you know, the action live shots that you saw a little bit in that sizzle reel, as we call it. But my main focus and where I feel like I become a non-interchangeable part as a correspondent is by the style, approach, and creativity of my storytelling, and also my what I would brag as my unmatched skills at finding characters, finding interesting people to focus in on. And that's what makes it different. Now, in terms of safety and risk, that's something it's a really challenging one for us all the time, and every country is different. The level of secure, but one thing I want to make clear is that a lot of thought goes into how to do things responsibly, safely. In Haiti, that required having 2 armored vehicles, a vehicle that, and I think we had 4 or 5 armed guards, and then you had someone who would go out in advance to where you were going to make sure the coast was clear. That required serious security to be there because of the very real risk of being apprehended by the gangs and then ransomed. We wanted to avoid that. That gets very ugly and very expensive very fast, and it's definitely happened to people. In fact, the fixer that I worked with over there, fixer is the term for the kind of the coordinator on the ground, the person you work with on the ground, the producer, local producer is another term for it. He'd already been kidnapped once himself when he was with the journalist, so you have to be extremely cautious. In Ukraine, there you're having to take carefully calibrated risks, and when you learn about the risk from experts, part of that formula is time. How much time you're spending in a place where you're more likely to be hit by a mortar round, where you're more likely to be hit by a drone. If you can limit the time on scene, work fast, get what you need, get out, that helps. That reduces your overall risk and brings it to where you get it to what's an acceptable level of risk, because your company they know having a dead journalist is very expensive, and also it's not that Machiavellian. They genuinely, of course, care about me, my safety, my returning home alive, and so that's why I have to work with our risk department to figure out, okay, how can we do this in a way that's acceptable for everyone, like an acceptable level of risk, and sometimes that's also working with security consultants to figure out this stuff because it's very difficult, very complicated. The other thing I'll note about journalists, we're all very competitive with one another, but I can tell you, spending many nights and in Kyiv in the lounge of the hotel where all the journalists say, we're all exchanging information with one another. This road, what it's like, how can you do this safely? Can you go with that unit? How dangerous is it? When it comes to safety, that's one area where we're very collaborative. Thank you for the question.
Yeah, thank you. Great insights.
Hi, my name is Will Hansen from Hellgate High School. Thanks so much for being with us today. My question is, you talked a lot about AI's effect on like longer form feature pieces, and how it's not actually going to have that much of an effect. I'm curious your thoughts on how it's going to affect shorter form, like breaking news stories or like sports journalism. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. It's a good question. I don't know that I have I don't know the answer because I don't think anyone does. But what I can see is that shorter form journalism, a lot of that can be replicated by AI. What we call in the industry commodity news, the same thing. When everybody has the same thing, when everyone has the same piece of footage, when everybody has the same elements to work with to put something together. Yeah, AI might be able to do that, might be able to assemble it better, edit it better, might be able to even write it better than we can. That's what I think these days, having a unique style really makes a difference. One that makes you stand out, where people relate to you as a real human being and they follow you and your work. One of the things that we're learning is that the brand of the company that you work for now to the younger audiences matters a whole lot less than the journalist himself or herself, right? So whether you work for CNN, for Scripps, for Wall Street Journal, that's all well and good, but the journalists themselves become the ones that people follow and the ones that, and so it creates, I don't know whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but that is the reality right now, is that you got to create your presence. One of the things that I've been working on and I haven't been the best about is you got to do your own self-promotion these days. You've got to be putting, and that takes time and effort and thought, getting yourself out there on social media networks. I started recently. Hey, I'd love for you guys to subscribe. I created a Substack newsletter. It's a free one because I'm not allowed to make money from it because I'm of my contract. But you can find me at Jason Bellini. It's on Substack, or you can find me on X and all the other things. It takes time to do that. It's a lot of work. Others of my peers have done a much better job of promoting themselves and making themselves into a brand, the personal brand, if you will. But there's no escaping. That's the way this world works now. You got to become your own brand to have power to get better salary, better positions, and the rest.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Okay, we're going to go to a question from the virtual audience. Jason, this fall you attended the high-level General Assembly meeting in New York. Based on that and your other experiences observing the UN, what impressions and developing stories are you following? And what are your predictions about the future of the UN?
Oh, these are tough questions. Very difficult ones, but thank you for them. And look, you're asking the big questions, and I'm not sure that I have sufficient answers to the satisfactory answers to all those things. And there are people who are better experts who are there with you right now to speak to those things. But what I will say is that the types of problems that the UN is confronting now, some of the hardest ones, are not just about money. Money is a big thing, and we all know that there's controversy about the US withdrawing funds or holding back funds or not being as generous as it once was with the United Nations. But to me, bigger issue is, let's look at Haiti, right? That's a really challenging situation where you could point at the UN and say, the UN has been an utter failure there, that they're not doing anything to get rid of the gangs that are guilty of sexual violence on a mass scale, that are terrorizing the people. Where's the UN? What are they doing? Well, my thought on that is the world is really complex. And if let's say the United Nations wanted to go and get rid of the gangs in Haiti that now control the capital, Port-au-Prince. Let's say the UN wanted to go do that. It's not just about throwing money at the problem. It's not just throwing bodies at the problem. What would happen if the UN decided to do that? Well, maybe they would have some success, but not without massive collateral damage, because these gangs, they're using teenagers, child soldiers, right? We're talking 13, 14-year-olds. So you are not going to be able to go in and get rid of these gangs surgically enough to not be killing 13 and 14-year-old kids. You're just not. There's no way to do it. So that is ugly business. And of course, as soon as the images start coming out of the collateral damage of kids being killed while you're trying to get rid of these gangs, well, that's gonna throw some real cold water on the situation. And I think it's important to keep in mind that there are no easy solutions. So what should they do there? What should the UN do? I don't know. I really don't. The longer I do the work that I do, the more I've almost had to accept that we live in an imperfect world where there may not be an easy solution to the most intractable problems. But at the same time, I meet on the ground when these places, people with big hearts who are doing the best that they can and who are making a difference. But the big macro questions about what should the UN be doing and what's the future of the UN, I don't know that I have satisfactory answers to that, but I think we can still be proud of it as an institution, as the institution where the biggest problems facing this planet, the biggest catastrophes, the most shameful atrocities get highlighted and get and I'm in the business of bringing attention to stories. The United Nations helps us do that. And that's probably one of its most important roles. If it can't solve it, at least it brings attention to those problems and forces governments to reckon with them, to deal with the tough problems.
Hello, my name is Miles Minders, and I'm from Gallatin High School. And thank you for being here today. My question for you is a little bit more broad. Firstly, what has been the high point of your career? And secondly, what has been the lowest point?
Oh, those are good questions. Thank you. Highest point and lowest point. Wow. All right, I gotta think for a moment about that. There have been a lot of highs and a lot of lows as well. Highest point, lowest point. I think that a big high point was some of the professional recognition that I've gotten in the past year with some of these awards, because in industry it matters. It shows that your peers see your work and they respect it. And one of the things that's also gratifying to me about when we talk about the professional recognition of awards is that I've done things my own way, in terms of I'm out there most of the time by myself with a camera. I don't have a big crew and team. And I feel like I've been able to show that you can do the same quality of work without having the same infrastructure, if you will, and the same resources that others have. That it's about finding great stories. And I've found ways on my own, using multiple cameras and all kinds of new technologies, to tell those stories visually without having what others have. The teams, the size of the teams, the level of camera people, sound people, all that kind of stuff. I'm able to do it on my own. It's been a lot of work. It's been very hard to get to do that, but I think that's been a high point. All right, I'll give you a low point. Yeah, I'll give you one. This summer, I had a low point. I was in Australia, and we're both supposed to be in bed with U.S. Special Forces, and there were some mix-ups. And I get there, and I'd already missed the sort of the main battle of this war game because I got bad information. And so this is after traveling 15 hours or whatever it was, 17 hours to get to this remote area of Australia. And then I find this out, and then I get a call from my partner that our dog had passed away. And I was like, and I thought the dog, I knew when I left that we knew she had cancer, right? And my partner, he said, you need to go on this trip. This is an important trip. And I go, I guess maybe I should cancel it. I want to be there with you and with her. Well, maybe I think we've got time. Eternal optimist that I was. But it was clear at that moment when he called me, this is the moment we need to go put her to sleep and give her a peace. And there I was, and I felt really guilty and felt guilty, and I felt like I should have been there. I should be there with him, with her for that moment. And things suck right now with how this assignment is going. I just needed to. So I told the military I was supposed to sleep in the tents and everything. I was like, I need to step away. I need some time. I didn't explain the situation. I just said, I'm going to a hotel. So I had some privacy to mourn. But that was low moments. And you know what? This is a profession that requires a lot of sacrifice. And that was one of the moments where I was reminded, I have this exciting job. I get to go all these interesting places and meet all these amazing people. Lots of fun, but there's a cost. There is a cost. And sometimes it really, really punches you in the gut, the cost, what you're paying for the opportunity.
Thank you for sharing.
Hi, I'm Fenton from Flathead High School. You were just talking about that kind of relationship between cost and opportunity. I'm curious as to where you would kind of draw that line at in terms of risk assessment and risk evaluation. If there's ever been any situation where you've had to been like, this is too much, I need to back out. It's not a level of risk I'm willing to accept.
All right, you're asking a hard question as well. Then it's a hard question because, look, I had a fairly close call, and it was about a year or so ago. And as I get older, I realize I'm responsible for a lot of important decisions that don't just affect me, right? They affect. I'm with a fixer, local producer, we call them. I'm putting, their safety. That's on me. And I've got people who love me and who would be devastated if anything happened to me. And if something, if I were to be, badly injured, who'd be forced to take care of me. But there's also a part of you that is hungry for the story. And so last fall, I was working on the stories about how robots on the front line in Ukraine are becoming, let's just say, a thing, right? They're starting to use robots that can attack and that also can rescue people. In an environment where drones now make it impossible to bring vehicles to the front line, to go rescue people who are injured, and to even deliver more ammo to them and whatnot, it's become basically impossible. So you're trying to solve for that using robotic technology. And so I found a unit that was willing to take me and show me how they operate with a robot. It was the way it worked. We went late at night after dark, and this was a situation where we knew that, and they were very clear about this. we're going to be seen. We're in a vehicle on a dirt road heading to the location, to the drop-off point, right? You're going to be followed the whole way by a thermal drone that's going to see you. Then and you're wearing this big suit that tries to hold in your body heat, but the instructions are very clear. The moment the car stops, it's going to be a screeching halt, and you're going to jump out and you're going to run, get in the bunker, which we did. And then, and of course, soon thereafter, like very quickly, we're, there's mortar rounds that are coming to the location where we had just been, right? So, then on the way out, the vehicle that was picking us up came under attack by a mortar round and nearly blew it up. And the one we were about to get in, and we had to like go down this road where on either side there might have been landmines, and it's one of those moments where you're thinking to yourself, what am I doing here? This was higher risk. This was pretty high risk. This was high risk, and you have to be, I think, very cognizant of a few things. Behavioral science teaches some important lessons. One of them being that one, if you haven't had enough sleep, you're not necessarily making the most prudent decisions you would if you were well rested. That's one thing. Another thing is that we sometimes overestimate, or we can be prone to magical thinking or thinking that this will be being overly optimistic. Was it the right call to go on this mission or not? Well, I think obviously had we known that this was going to happen, then no, it would have been an unacceptable risk. I made the call that in consultation with a security advisor who was with me, because we knew this was going to be a risky assignment. In consultation with him, we made the call. We said go. We had the go, no go moment, and we decided to go. What I can tell you is that now, based on that experience, and then also how realities on the ground have changed, there's a lot of things that I was doing a year ago I would not be allowed to do now, because we've crossed that risk threshold where we can use that term, mitigate risk. There's no way to mitigate the risk when you're on some of these roads pretty much any of these roads in eastern Ukraine, where you could be hit at any time. We can't mitigate against that risk, and so it's a no-go situation. One thing I thought about is that I've gotten to know some younger journalists, one in particular who he's there independently, and he's doing exactly what I would have been doing at his age, right? And which scares me a little bit, because that when you're that young, you're more willing to take risks. Also, he doesn't have an institution behind him that is also saying no. He doesn't have anyone saying no. You can't do that. It's too dangerous. And I heard from him the other day. He was somewhere near the front line, and there was an explosion nearby, and the shock waves gave him a concussion. He was like, there's fluid coming out of his nose. He's okay. One thing I do know is that you're only allowed a few concussions before you have major damage to your brain, because it's cumulative and it's exponential, the damage that happens there. So we're grappling with the question of how do we cover this war now, given the current security environment, and in the age of drones, that's not going to go away. It's only going to become more risky wherever you go, wherever you are in the world. I hope that's helpful.
Yeah, wow. Thank you.
So Jason, we're going to go about 10 minutes, and I have 6 students lined up here, and I wonder if you'd be willing for me to run through their questions all at once, if you could kind of take notes and we could try to holistically address them, because otherwise I think we're only going to get to 2 more students. And we had an unfortunate block of all men initially, and now I have 4 women lined up. So I want to make sure to get all these questions out. Is that
Absolutely.
okay? Okay.
Absolutely.
So say your name, your school, your question, and then we'll go to the next student.
Hi, I'm the actual Eli from Big Sky High School. My question is just like, when you're in those situations where you feel like there's a serious risk for your life, like how do you stay calm and keep making rational decisions?
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Evie, and I'm from Gallatin High School. And my question is about you're talking about how the usage of AI is continuing to be implemented, and you were also talking about the use of robotics on the front lines in Ukraine. So I was wondering what you think the future implications of ethics for lethal autonomous weapons will be.
Hi, I'm Peyton Barrows. I'm from Gallatin High School. Thank you for being here. My question is about, as a man who's successful in your career field, could you have seen your career going in a different way? And what would you say to high schoolers who are debating what career they would like to go into?
Hi, I'm Maya Magneto from Gallatin High School, and I had a question about your career. What single asset differentiates a good journalist and a memorable one? Thank you for your time.
My name is Layla Kelly. I'm from Bozeman High School, and you stated that you have like 4 armed guards and like a lot of protection on your missions. How do you rationalize leaving behind people, like rationalize your privilege when you come back to the States and you leave behind all these people who don't necessarily have the privilege of protection? And I'm sure you've known people who have died in these situations. So yeah, how do you rationalize that, I guess?
Hi, I'm Steele Hansing, and I wanted to ask you about how you think the United Nations would focus on the use of AI through warfare, through propaganda, and through military speaking.
Hi, my name is Winnie, and I'm from Coeur d'Alene Charter, and I was just wondering if having a job that like requires you to travel ever interferes with like family relationships or like personal relationships or even friendships and stuff. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Owen Dinkins from Bozeman High School. How hard do you try to find the perfect person for the perfect story rather than just using what you find on the ground?
So those are a lot of great questions. I'll give you a moment then to kind of figure out how you want to approach those. Some of those might have been a bit duplicative, but I want to thank all the students. Those are fantastic questions, and you're really putting Jason on the spot.
Yes, he did. They're great questions. I'm going to go with the one. I'm going to start with the one that put me on the spot the most, and that one was about the armed guards that I mentioned in Haiti. That was a unique situation. I don't typically have armed guards with me, but the question is still stands, and that is, yeah, I'm there for a short time, then I'm out, and the people who I've been covering, their lives continue. How do I grapple with that? The answer is. I grapple with it and I feel guilt about it, honestly. You know, when I'm leaving, I'm well aware that and when I'm there, I feel like, I'm telling you, war stories about how, there's dangerous things that I'm doing and whatnot, and, seem like a badass, but no, I'm there for a short time, very short time relative to the people who I'm covering. I'm just getting a little taste of it. And I told that to someone I was talking to about PTSD, and he said, well, that's what he hears all the time from journalists is that, they always feel like, how can I why should I even talk about PTSD? I'm just there for, for a short time. My risk is so low relative to that of everyone else. And they say, well, if you want to keep doing your job, you've got to take care of yourself. But that is the thing, and that is the job. And it's, but for me, the way I reconcile on that one is that I give it my all in telling these people's stories, doing honor to the stories that they're willing to share, sometimes at great personal risk, right? So I then go back and I'm putting together these stories, and I give it everything. I put my heart and soul into telling their stories. That's the best I can do. And also by being cognizant, I think, of and thinking about these people and the reality that they're experiencing. God, there's so many good questions. AI robotics, ethics when it comes to weapons. Oh, that's a good one. And I think that when you look at the battlefield in Ukraine, AI is working its way in, and ideally, it seems to me that there would be some rules of war that are created for the drone age, because otherwise, when you have two sides that are fighting to the death, they're going to use every opportunity, every possibility they have. And when you have AI allowing you to do Well, let's take a scenario. Let's say and I'm not sure this is far-fetched, okay? Let's say that you have a drone with a camera on it that is able to process faces. It can go hunting for somebody, right? Let's do a facial recognition, find this person, and then kill them autonomously. If that's not happening already, it's going to happen soon. The only way to remedy that is not by, counting on adversaries to restrain themselves when they're fighting to the death. No, there's got to be a consensus, a global consensus, and that's where the UN could potentially come in. Create a moral standard, create a red line. We do not. Where that red line is, what should be allowed, shouldn't be allowed. That can be discussed, can be debated, but I think that we need to start creating some moral red lines, creating new rules and new and a new list of war crimes when it comes to this. Yes, some career questions. Let me think. Does it interfere with family relationships? Yeah, sometimes I've seen a lot of journalists who've, managed to make big wrecks of their lives. Alcoholism becomes very common among journalists, and that's something I've tried to be very careful about my consumption, because you do see people using alcohol to numb pain and to avoid issues. And so that's one area where I try to be real, you go out, it's very easy to become a booze hound when you're out in war zones, that's for sure. So I try not to do, I try really hard to do that and try to keep myself from blowing up my own life that way. And by getting better about sharing with my partner what's going on in my head, what I'm experiencing. I'm trying to get better at doing that, and I think that helps. It's a balance. Like, you don't want to scare the person that you love, but at the same time, you need to. I'm becoming more and more believer that things that bother you the most, that you think about in silent moments, are the ones that you should be talking to those who are you're closest with about them. I really do believe that. I think that's the only solution. As humans, I think we're social creatures, and we can't solve our problems alone. We can't grapple with things and just sort it out in our own head. It doesn't work that way, in my experience and from what I've observed. And I think that can be applied to just about anything. You've got to talk it out. There's something about the talking it out that can diffuse the bombs that are in your psyche. There's so many other questions. We may be out of time. I don't know. How are we doing?
We have 2 more minutes. If there's anything you want to address on those questions.
How do you stay calm and make rational decisions? It may be a thing where some people are actually just better at this than others. Better. I don't know if that's the right. I don't want to put a value judgment on it. But some people panic. Others are, for whatever reason, calm. I'm sort of in that category. I'm able to sort of deal with a situation and become very, go into this hyper-focused rational mode. Other people don't have that, and they stay out of this business. They discover that about themselves. So I don't know that there's necessarily a formula for being that way. I think it's kind of a question of who you are and what your life experiences have been. I've had one therapist tell me once, "Oh, you've had the fear kicked out of you." Well, that's not a good thing necessarily, but maybe it's helpful in this line of work. But at the same time, being rational and calm is key. Yeah, your heart's going to race if you're a human being, but can you think clearly? What's my next action? As one of the security advisors that I've worked closely with would say, don't panic, be dynamic, keep moving, keep going, keep thinking, all right, what's my next move? How am I going to, how do I get out of this situation? Keep thinking, and this works. I've learned a lot from these security advisors who are former special forces types. They're always calculating in their heads. Okay, what's my next, if this happens, I'm going to do that. So yeah, I think that one of the things you got to figure out about yourself is what level of risk are you okay with, and how do you react to a big, a life-threatening situation? How do you react in those circumstances? Many times you don't know until you've actually been there.
Well, I think we're all sorry that our time is up. Jason, this has been a fantastic session. We're deeply grateful to you for sharing your unique experience with us. Great questions. These are amazing. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them. And Channing, thank you so much for your inspirational remarks at the beginning. So let's give our speakers a hand.
Thank you so much. May I say one more thing? You still hear me?
We
Are you able
can.
to still hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I just want to say thank you. It's been an honor to be with y'all. And wow, those are smart questions. You guys got me thinking. And an example of it being, it's being healthy for me too, to talk out some of these things. I really believe that. And I hope that there's one thing you take away from this is when you got things that, the more you talk it out with people, whatever your issues are, whatever your problems are, whatever your circumstances are, that's where I think the solutions can be found. You can't do it on your own. I think if there's one message I want to impart, it's that. And then the second message is feel free to reach out to me. I'm on X and all the rest, Jason Bellini. And yeah, sign up for my newsletter, all that. I'd love that. But do feel free to reach out if you'd like. Thank you again.
Thank you so much, Jason.
Before I should do that, I should not announce the advisor's name. Okay, before I send you all off, I just wanted to announce very quickly, once you are all dismissed, we are going to let your advisors and the committee staff and XCOM leave first. Then you may leave the room, but you can't leave yet, okay? All right. I now call the 2025 Montana Model United Nations High School Conference to order. I will accept a motion to suspend the meeting so that delegates may move to committee. Are there any motions at this time? The delegate of China. Thank you, delegate. That motion is in order. All those in favor of this motion, please raise your placards. Just one person from your committee. Perfect. Quiet, please. Thank you. And all those opposed? Excellent. That motion clearly passes. MMUN is now suspended until 2 p.m. tomorrow, when the plenary committee will meet for the closing ceremony. Please be in your conference rooms by 10:15. Advisors and committee staff, you may leave. Thank you.